Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
Steve.
So today we're discussing what, Steve?
Alright, so today I thought it would be interesting on the occasion of The Devil Wears Prada 2 finally coming out that we talk about this idea in the last 10, 15 years or so of the legacy sequel. So I don't just mean reboots and relaunches of franchises. So like Casino Royale is not a legacy sequel. The Scream movies that are being released since the last 3 or 4 years, those are not legacy sequels. What I'm talking about specifically is movies that come out as direct sequels to something several decades after the release of either their last installment or their initial installment. So like the Scream sequels wouldn't count, but Halloween 2018 would. And the reason I bring that one up is the thing that delineates a legacy sequel, I think, from just a regular reboot is that the passage of time between installments in the real world is a part of the story within the legacy sequel. So every legacy sequel is about everyone involved getting older and changing from the last time we saw them in real life, and that sort of becomes the meta-narrative drive throughout. And so in our group chat, I put a list of legacy sequels, and then I updated it slightly to include a bunch of good ones and a bunch of bad ones. And in the case of Indiana Jones, I guess it happened twice if you really think about it. Mm-hmm. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk through some of these examples and talk through like what's interesting and what's not interesting about them. Obviously, there's a lot of just like really boring conversation to be had about like the originality of Hollywood and intellectual property and the AI stuff and just everything wrong with the world, which I'm sure we'll get to a little bit. But the thing I find a little bit more interesting are the ones like The Matrix or Top Gun or Beetlejuice or 28 Years Later or like Rocky Balboa or the Creed movies, like examples where someone involved with the original actively comes back and becomes the driving force of the movie, and how it's both kind of autobiographical, but also sort of a statement about what it's meant to them over the course of that decades and how they've changed their minds about it and that kind of thing. So I've got a specific place I want to start off with on my side, but I'm curious to kind of get your overall thoughts on just this idea that we've been doing legacy sequels for so long.
You know, it's such a weird thing, and I think you're right on, like, a big part of it is just that Hollywood's out of ideas and is afraid to take risks, because, like, every major release now needs to be $1 billion movie or it's a failure, it would seem.
Right, right.
So, I think it makes sense in that regard, but, like, the thing that strikes me so much thinking about this is how few of them actually, like, to borrow a phrase from famous philosopher Steve Baxi, actually justify their existence.
It's true.
Yeah. Because, like, so much of them just, you know, they feel like a cash grab, and then you sit there and you watch the movie and you're like, well, that was a cash grab, wasn't it? Or just, you know, like, what were we doing here? What was the point? Was this needed? Was this, like, worthwhile? And often the answer is no. And then on occasion the answer might be kinda, but very rarely do I feel like a lot of these, you know, quote-unquote need another sequel. I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain, and I think you might have it here in your list of like, what's the first one of these? And I think it might be Indiana Jones and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like,
See,
is
yeah.
that the first belated sequel, or legacy sequel, or can we think of earlier ones?
So when I was doing my research for this, because lo and behold, I did research, even though I only came up with the topic this morning. But but when I was doing my research, I found that there is like, depending on your definition of legacy sequel, you could actually conceivably go back a lot further, because we didn't used to pump out sequels in the same rapid fire manner that we used to. So like there are several long running franchises like horror movies where the initial sequel is itself like a decade later. And so in those instances, you could say like those were the original legacy sequels, when like the sequel to a slasher movie, like the sequel to Psycho doesn't come out until like a decade after Psycho, like that kind of thing. But I think in the definition that we're kind of trying to operate on, this idea of the passage of time is what the movie is about, then I think arguably the first one would actually be Rocky Balboa. Because
Okay.
Crystal Skull is 2008, but Rocky Balboa is 2006. And we hadn't had a Rocky movie since the early 90s at that point, and that's a movie where Stallone comes back to write and direct the movie. I think he directs it. I don't remember. I know he wrote the movie at the very least. He comes back and he writes the movie just like he did the originals, and it's all about Rocky getting old and about that one last fight, that kind of Dark Knight Returns Rocky movie. I think that would be like the first modern example. And like arguably for a lot of people, if not the original, Rocky Balboa is a lot of people's favorite Rocky movie, because it's such an interesting sort of personal reflection from Stallone and for that character about how the world has changed, and accepting that you have to just sort of move on, even though everything around you feels like it should be the opposite, that he's kind of living inside of his own tomb, hanging out with pictures of people that have long died, and he's got like the tomb of Adrian that he visits and stuff, and it's a really kind of downer movie. And if they never made another Rocky movie afterwards, which I guess they didn't because the Creed movies are their own thing, it's very much kind of a send-off. It's an artist coming back after he is well past his prime, because like by 2006, Stallone would have had to have been like in his, God, who knows, like 60s or 70s at that point. Or probably 60s, something in that range, 50s or 60s. He was getting old at that point, and it's a movie about him getting old. So I think that would probably be the first real big one. And I think that movie was successful, but it wasn't like, Star Wars sequel successful. So I don't think a lot of people would attribute that one as like the starting point of the trend. But if we're talking about like this idea of dealing with the passage of time, it's probably the first real modern one.
Yeah, so Rocky's Balboa, I think that's an interesting one. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Is there an argument to be made for the Star Wars prequels? Because I mean, you have what or not Last Jedi. Return of the Jedi. There we go. Brain
it is.
freeze. Brain fart. Return of the Jedi is 83, and then Phantom Menace is 99. So you've got all over 15 years there.
Yeah.
So but that one, it's completely new cast of characters and everything. You're only like returning characters, or what, R2 and C-3PO, right?
Right.
Yoda, I guess.
Technically.
Yoda and I guess the Emperor, but he was only played by the same actor in the fucking last movie, so I don't know.
Star Wars, that's a weird one, because I thought about either the Star Wars prequels or the sequels, but because the prequels are so much their own thing, I feel like it's harder to make the argument.
Yeah, but they're also doing a very interesting thing, because it's like George Lucas trying to push Hollywood into a very interesting direction.
Yes,
and spoiler alert, it worked. um, for as bad as those movies are, surprisingly effective move, George Lucas.
It's
Um,
true. It's true.
uh, but yeah, so you got like these movies that are, like a direct sequel to this, super famous franchise. And then not too many years later, because it's what, Revenge of the Sith is '05, and then Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is '08.
Hmm.
So it's not too much longer before you get them doing this, and it is interesting to like think about how Lucas and Spielberg kind of seem to like predict these trends, because like there might be an argument that like Rocky Balboa is just like a weird outliner of like Sylvester Stallone just kind of doing his own thing, and then it just so happens to like coincide or like predate this trend, um, that like Spielberg and Lucas kind of low key kick off.
Yeah. No, that's a good point because like the big Hollywood blockbuster directors are the people that created the things that we would be making legacy sequels to in the first place. So the idea of going back to an intellectual property from the 80s to make a sequel and mine it for more wouldn't make sense without Spielberg and Lucas in the 70s and 80s inventing blockbuster movies to begin with. The prequels, I mean, I don't like them. I don't think they're very good movies, obviously. But what I find really interesting about the prequels, I wrote about Andor last year when that show ended, and I tried to thread the needle between the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy by using Andor. And the thing that I kind of realized looking back on those movies after rewatching them that year is the original trilogy is all about freedom and spirituality and mysticism and like that very sort of 70s hippie notion of liberation. And then when you get to the prequel trilogy, a lot of people bounce off those movies because it's so much about fate. It's about Anakin's fate is to become Darth Vader. It's about the entire project of the movies building towards a predetermined conclusion. And if you want to be generous about it, you could argue that George Lucas came back to make the prequel trilogies to do a lot of innovative CGI work, do a lot of things he never could have dreamed of in the 70s and 80s, and made a movie series that is kind of metaphorically about the downfall of of the world because of these kinds of movies. That if the end of Revenge of the Sith is democracy dying, it's also the end of the creative Hollywood that allowed Lucas to make Star Wars in the first place. If Return of the Jedi ends on this optimistic note of we won, the bad guys are dead, the prequel trilogy ends on this depressing note of the thing that we thought we were being liberated from was going to become our new enslaver. And that's where you get like the slew of franchise media that gets born after the Star Wars prequels. I don't know how much of that George Lucas would agree with, but I think that is an interesting part of those movies. And if you're right, you could say like the success of something like Revenge of the Sith catalyzed people into like wanting to go back and do more. Because the other movie in that same sort of time period between Rocky Balboa and Revenge of the Sith and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is Superman Returns. And Superman Returns is also that sort of thematic passage of time. Superman has come back after like 20-something years at that point of not being on a movie. And the fact that he has been gone is the whole plot of the movie.
Yeah, because what? It's more than 20 years. It's like almost 40 by that point, wouldn't it been? Or 30 or 40 years?
I don't remember when Superman 4 came out.
It's in the 80s, but I think it's like 85 or 86.
And then Returns is like 2005, so like maybe about 30 years, yeah.
Yeah, wow. That's crazy.
It's a long time, yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so wild to think of. Yeah, Superman Returns is an interesting one. So maybe it's not just Lucas and Spielberg with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and the Star Wars prequels. Maybe it is just kind of this Hollywood machine trying to get more in the business side. Someone took all the coke away from the executives, so they stopped like greenlighting all the wild ass fucking movies, and someone got in there with like charts and analytics. I know we're not big fans of the nostalgia critic here, but he did have that one joke that I thought was really good of like, well, but the chart says.
It definitely feels like that's how things are sometimes.
Well, like there is this weird shift in like the game used to be, you know, go get with the agents and do all the crazy stuff and like get, you know, everyone has to be morally compromised and high as balls to get a movie greenlit and stuff. They made like Entourage on the tail end of that stuff as the like business model started to shift to just not be like that anymore, which is why you could make a show like that, because everyone remembered when it was like this. That's a show like based on all the stories that like everyone in the business now grew up hearing. And so it's just this, you know, it's a completely different beast now, and you have to like show the like logistics and the incentives for investment in a property more so than you have to like pitch your crazy idea for a fucking movie.
And you know, and you know me, I could talk all day about how everything about Hollywood sucks lately, and movies need to do a better job of being original, and I hate all this IP stuff and yada yada yada. But I think that's also part of why I love The Matrix Resurrections as much as I do, is because it's a movie about this corporate desire to resuscitate a franchise that had ended, and the Wachowskis didn't originally want to do it. The death of their parents is the reason that I think Lily's the one who came back and directed that one. And it was kind of a goodbye for her to those characters that had gotten through so much of her life. But also, it was kind of her setting the entire premise on fire. That movie not only bombed, but was so panned that it basically killed the idea of making more Matrix movies at that point. And I think that was intentional in a way. I think that was her coming back and saying, let's reflect on what we created and let's burn the house down. And that's what ended up happening. And there's rumblings here and there over the years of like, oh, Drew Goddard's going to make a Matrix movie. But like, given how The Matrix Resurrections landed and Warner Brothers' like current financial strait, it doesn't seem like we're getting another Matrix movie for a long time.
And I'm okay with that because I don't like any of the movies.
Which, you know, fair enough. But that's the kind of thing I like about legacy sequels when they're good, is you get the people or one of the key people involved in the original to come back and kind of reflect both critically and emotionally about what worked and what didn't. And you get two very different flavors. I know we're kind of far into this conversation at this point, but the place I wanted to start with that in mind is actually Gladiator. So Ridley Scott makes Gladiator in like 2000s something. I don't remember how early in the 2000s, but it's like right in that 9/11, right before Iraq War era. So he makes Gladiator, and Gladiator is very much a George Bush kind of movie. It's a movie about a guy within the system of Rome. He gets turned into a slave. The system gets corrupted. He comes back. He makes these grand speeches, and it's a movie about reforming the corrupt system. It's a very liberal 2000s kind of movie. Then a couple years ago, Ridley Scott comes back, and he makes Gladiator 2. And a lot of people hated Gladiator 2 because they're like, this is just a remake of the original with a different character. But I thought it was a really good movie because the main character of Gladiator 2 is someone who exists outside of Rome, who gets enslaved, and you essentially retell the same story from the outside perspective. And the character that Russell Crowe would have played in the original Gladiator ends up being one of the main antagonists of the first half of the movie. And when you watch that one and you look at the tone and you hear the speeches that the new character is making, it's a very post-Trump movie. It's a movie about the system cannot be reformed. The system is operating as intended, and the idea that you can reform it is a Godfather 2 style proposition where you were closing the door behind you and you were just going to become part of the corrupt system. And I thought that was really interesting and really compelling because it's the same guy making the same movie 2 times, but in the span of 20 years, his outlook on life and politics had radically changed. And so one movie is way more cynical than the other.
That's interesting because I remember hearing like takes on Gladiator 2. I've not seen it, but I've seen like a lot of takes on it that talk about how just awful it is politically speaking, and I'm like, the way you're describing it sounds very different than the hot takes I've heard of it. So
That's good.
kind of makes me want to watch Gladiator 2 and see like who's spitting and who's making shit up at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie that I think like people justifiably kind of resisted because it seemed like it was just another one of those, why are we doing this? Why are we just repeating the beats of the first? But because it's the same director and because it's intentionally the same story, I do feel like there's like an interesting texture to it that a lot of other legacy sequels kind of don't. Like, you look at like fucking Space Jam 2, right? Like, they were not trying to reinvent the wheel with that one. They were just trying to cash in a certain kind of marketing and a certain kind of nostalgia to bring back a certain audience. With Gladiator 2, like, no one profited from that movie. It did not do well. It only exists because Ridley Scott's kind of a madman and he had an interesting idea. And he said post that movie that he kind of envisioned it as the start of a Godfather trilogy, where the second one ends in the same way the second Godfather does, with that sort of corruptive implication. And then the third one is the big downfall movie. Now, because the second one didn't do very well, I don't know if the third one's ever going to happen. But I'd be very interested to see how he closes that out after all these years.
I mean, is there like a because you talked about one of the elements of this being the gap in time between the movies being made informing the story. Is there a large gap in time between Gladiator 1 and 2?
Yes. Do you care about spoilers or no?
Nah, I'm fine.
All right, cool. So the main character of Gladiator 2 is the son of Russell Crowe all grown up. So it's like a couple decades, maybe a little less than that after the first one.
Okay. Well, if they're gonna talk about the fall of Rome in the second one, I don't imagine that they're gonna go straight from the filling the Colosseum with water to and then Rome fell in the next 5 years later. If they ever get around to it or not, I don't know.
Who knows? Maybe the next one will be like 9 hours long. Go through the entire end of Rome.
It'd be wild.
I'd be here for it. I'd watch it.
You know what they say, Rome didn't fall in a day.
But yeah, I mean, that's what I find really cool when legacy sequels do come out and kind of hit that emotional note. Like your Rocky Balboas, your 28 years later, your Gladiator 2s, your Matrix Resurrections, your movies where the coming back to the franchise is like a monkey's paw situation. And you're really trying to reflect on whether this is a thing that can continue in the first place, or if you do need to just give it a sentimental goodbye. And I mean, if there's any criticism about the Creed movies, the first one at least, it's that Sylvester Stallone kind of hijacks the back half to give himself a send-off that he already gave himself half a decade ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Because like, what, we're on Creed 4 now at this point, or some shit.
The third one came out, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. There's been talks of a fourth one, but nothing official.
Okay, yeah, it was like all the awkwardness because that was when what's his name got busted for
That's right.
domestic violence or whatever.
Yeah, Jonathan Majors.
Yeah, that was like right off the heels of that movie coming out, and like his career seeming to explode, and then his career exploded, but not in the good way.
Yep.
So it made Creed 3 awkward for people. So yeah, we might not get a fourth. I still haven't seen any of them. So the idea of like waiting to have something come out and then like the fact that like we exist in a cancel culture now means it's got like its own particular like what's the word I want here? Its own particular set of risks associated with it.
Yeah.
Because like now it's like, oh, we should make a sequel to that. It's like, oh no, you've not paid attention to what like that actor's been up to now, have you? Just with everyone getting canceled in Hollywood now it's like its own set of fucking risks. Leah's kind of gotten into the Pirates franchise a little bit, and like,
oh no,
man, we were watching that first one again. Just all-time blockbuster movie, that first Pirates movie. I fucking slaps. The next one, also really great sequel. Third one has its issues. Then they just kept making them. The last Pirates movie came out in 2017 for some fucking reason. It's a weird one. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. It's weird because like fucking like the way they do Pirates 4 is interesting because, or no, Pirates 5, sorry. The way they do Pirates 5 is interesting because if you just watched it, you would think that it was Pirates 4. Because they like barely do it. It's not that they don't acknowledge the events of the fourth movie, but it's just like so, like Penelope Cruz doesn't come back. It's just, it feels like so detached from what they tried and failed to do with the third movie. And so they like go running back to Will and Elizabeth, who like were supposed to have exited the franchise after the original trilogy ended. It's just such a weird thing, but it's like, it's also 10 years after the original trilogy ended, so it kind of fits into a weird way with this, and I think it's like 6 or 7 years after the third one, or the fourth one, I mean. So it like fits in an odd place in here, and then I think both the fourth one and the fifth one did so bad that they'll never make another, but we'll see, I guess.
I know there was like rumblings of like a Margot Robbie led Pirates movie. I don't know what happened to that, but I remember that being a story for a minute.
I mean, it is weird that they like leaned so hard into it as a Johnny Depp star vehicle when I remember seeing interviews with him after the first one came out of like, oh, they didn't, the executives didn't like it when they saw footage of me on the set and like my dailies and stuff. They were trying to remove me from the movie, but I had a contract, so they couldn't. And then, like, he's just the most successful character, so they build the whole franchise around him, and that's, like, what arguably makes the latter movies start to work less and less and less.
Yep. Yeah, because he's enough of a bit player in the first one that it's amazing when he comes on screen, but he doesn't take away from any of the weight to it. And as they go on, he's just too much in the movies.
Yeah, it becomes more and more about him, and like the first one's arguably more of like an ensemble cast.
Yeah.
But then as the movies go on, they become more and more just about Jack Sparrow, and to the point where like not only did they add Jack Sparrow to the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, they made the entire narrative of the ride about Jack Sparrow. Now, which just feels so bizarre to think about. But like, so the idea of like trying to just keep the franchise going, not like reboot, but just make it a like anthology would, I think, make a lot of sense. But I feel like we're getting further and further away from the idea of the legacy sequel at this point. So yeah, but like the idea I want to return to is how many of them like actually work, or like not just, oh well that was interesting, or oh well these are some like cool ideas, but like no, that was definitely necessary to continue the story of this movie we thought we were done with 20 years ago, and also it was a good movie.
So it's hard to find that.
Maverick.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, if you want the two-hander, because there's a lot of legacy sequels that suck, there's a lot of legacy sequels that are good. There are very few that are both good and successful. If you want one that's good and successful, fucking Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick, one of the best action movies of all time. I love that movie. So, Top Gun Maverick's interesting from this perspective because you don't have the same director. Obviously, Tony Scott had passed away by this point, but a sequel to Top Gun's been a thing for a very, very, very long time, and it's just kind of been ebbing and flowing in development hell. But Tom Cruise, for decades, had been like cultivating his reputation, and he has very distinct eras of when he was the action star, when he was taking creative risks with like Kubrick movies and Magnolia and all that, and then he's had like his baby franchise in the Mission Impossible movies. So coming back to Top Gun is interesting in that respect because it's the kind of movie that he sort of should have been done with given where he was in his career. And the way they cope with that is they basically turned it into a similar, in the back half at least, a similar style of movie to what the Mission Impossible movies ended up being. But Top Gun Maverick's really cool because it's Tom Cruise reflecting not only on getting older and things changing, but the idea of that the movies are changing. And so you had that movie come out right after COVID. And it was one of the first movies people could go see as a group in a theater without masks in like 2001-ish, in like that early spring time. And part of why it did so well is because it was a crowd pleaser after COVID, but also because there was that whole year of time where nothing was getting made. People were losing money constantly. Things were getting shifted to streaming. It seemed like Hollywood was kind of on a precipice that the pandemic, like most things, finally pushed it over the edge. And all of these terrible things that we've been dealing with for years, like the streamers, like digital, all of those were now finally in a position to just kind of rip everything to shreds. And then Top Gun Maverick comes out, and it's like the biggest movie of the year. It gets nominated for Best Picture. Steven Spielberg tells Tom Cruise he saved movies. And the movie is essentially Tom Cruise saying, this style of movie making where you have fighter jets and all the pilots are trained in a jet and they train so hard that they start getting jet fuel mixed with their blood and passing out and shit. This style of movie that we're making is probably not forever, but it's not done yet. And that's sort of the vibe of the whole movie. There's a scene early on where Tom Cruise comes in after he crashes a plane, obviously, and his commanding officer is like, it's been like 40 years and you're still a captain. You just have not changed. You're in the same spot. And then he talks about like how there are drones and remote strikes and all that. And he says that Tom Cruise is a dinosaur and his day is done. And Tom Cruise just says, maybe, but not today. And then the whole movie is him just teaching other people, specifically younger characters, with a lot of actors that would go on to be movie stars, like Glenn Powell, that you might be the next generation, but you cannot successfully take the torch until you can do this shit. And there's a scene in the movie, the whole premise of the movie is that there's a mission that they need to do that requires a very tricky maneuver in a plane that only a person could do. And the amount of training and skill required is basically inhuman. And so he has to teach these kids to do it, but none of them can do it. And it gets to a point where the commanders are just like, look, they're not going to do it successfully and survive, so we just have to teach it to them in a way where they'll do it and probably die. And they relieve Tom Cruise of duty. So then as they relieve him of duty, he goes on the training course while everyone's in class ready to watch, and he proves that it can be done. So the big climax of the movie is like, look, they're not going to get it. You just have to do this and save the world. And that's what he does. So
that's the most Tom Cruise thing to ever Tom Cruise.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit of like, clearly you have to pray at the altar of Tom Cruise a little bit. But it's such a like bona fide great popcorn movie, and it's such a feel good idea of like, okay, at least somebody is out there making real movies for as long as he's alive, that it kind of works for everybody. It's a reflection of what makes him a great actor and what makes him a great stunt person and what makes him great for movies, and an acknowledgement that like over these decades, these are the kinds of people we just don't have anymore, and that's sad.
I would tend to agree. That's interesting to kind of like think on. I don't know. Can I just like not have Tom Cruise be the one like saving cinema? Can literally can anyone else do it, please?
Look, if anyone else is willing to go outside and hang off of a plane without wiring for the sake of movies, feel free. Feel free. Who else is doing that shit? Who else is filming the end of movies first because the stunt is so dangerous they might just die?
Shouldn't you do that last?
No, you gotta do it first, because if he dies, there's no movie.
No, that's why you just do it last.
No, that's what happened to Brendan Lee. You can't do that again.
Oh, now it's sad.
I know, it's depressing. I mean, I guess the Crow reboot might be another interesting topic, but it's not really a legacy sequel. It's just a straight remake.
Yeah. Like, the remakes that come out, decades later and are just never as good or whatever, that's a whole other topic, I feel.
Yeah.
The legacy sequels, so rarely do they, work, and it kind of does make you just sit there and go, why are we doing this? What's the itch that's getting scratched? Why did we make Devil Wears Prada 2?
Yes.
I've not watched The Devil Wears Prada. I didn't really feel like I knew that movie was ripe for a sequel, though.
Yes, 100%. 20 years later, no less.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
So, I haven't seen Devil Wears Prada 2 yet. I like the original fine. It's cute. It's a... Yeah. I was just saying. It's a 2000s comedy drama. It doesn't age the best in the world, but I like things about it. The one thing about the new one, I haven't seen it yet, but what I've heard people say is the reason the movie is at least interesting is that you're going from a movie in the 2000s about someone who wants to make a career being a writer, meeting someone who is at the top of that industry in a world now where you just cannot make a career doing that. And so it does deal with the death of print media and the death of having 4 higher writing gigs and what that does to both the old school of people, but also the people that thought they were going to have financial security that no longer do. So I think that part of it is interesting. How seriously it takes that idea, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but at least that's an angle.
That's fascinating, particularly because I didn't know that about either movie. I don't know why.
Yeah, the premise is that
I always thought it was about fashion. I remember her being criticized for her outfits and stuff. I thought she was trying to get into the fashion industry.
Yeah, no, it's about... So Anne Hathaway in the original movie is trying to be a journalist, and she gets a job being the assistant for Meryl Streep, who is the editor-in-chief of a famous fashion magazine.
Oh, okay.
Anne Hathaway wants to be a serious journalist, but this is the only job she can get, and then she has to learn to appreciate what Meryl Streep does in order to be successful. And she goes her own way at the end, but it is basically her learning what it takes to make it in that world through Meryl Streep. And it's got some interesting ideas about gender. There's a line of everyone talks about how evil Meryl Streep is, but if she was a man, no one would think that way, which is a sort of bad oversimplification, but it's interesting for 2006. So that's what the original is about. And then the sequel presumably is how you can just simply not make an income doing that anymore.
That's interesting. I don't know. I'm sitting here trying to think of why that would be a necessary movie, but I guess having something to say about the plot of the first one or the premise even of the first one makes sense in this changing world of ours. I don't know. I guess the thought that was occurring to me is, what is the movie that you didn't know needs a sequel? It's not had a legacy sequel made, but what's the movie that is crying out for a legacy sequel that the people just don't know?
Crying out for a legacy sequel.
Because I've got my answer. If you want to take a minute to think about it, I can talk about mine.
Yeah. What are you thinking?
Okay, because it was promised to us, and he claims he can't do it, and it is a sequel to Kung Pao Enter the Fist.
Oh, that would rule.
Yeah, particularly because like the technology that he used to make that movie has come so far, particularly with things like, you know, the deep fakes and all the like crazy CGI advancements that have been made since like 2001 when he made that fucking movie. And it's funny because he's like claimed over the years that like, oh well, I'm working on it, or I don't know if I can make it happen, or I don't know if there's interest. And I remember one interview with the director of it at one point was the explanation he gave was there's just not enough footage of the actors in other movies to be able to make it, because like some of those people never made another movie again. And I'm like, but do it anyway. You don't need to bring back all the same characters. And so my pitch for the sequel to Kung Pao Under the Fist is, instead of just, you know, like following the fake trailer he made for the sequel that took place at the end of the first movie, my pitch is that he should just use the same premise but do other genre films for like different foreign films. So instead of doing a kung fu movie, do like a cheesy kaiju movie, and just do the exact same fucking thing. Just put himself in it and dub over every character and make stupid jokes.
Low-key, I'd kind of be here for that. That sounds like fun.
I think it would be a good fucking time. I think the world cries out for a sequel to Kung Pao Under the Fist, even if it's only like a spiritual sequel. Because it's so weird, because he's the guy that made all the fucking stupid-ass Thumb movies.
I'd watch it. I mean, that sounds like it'd be a good time. I'm here for that.
Yeah. So, what's the movie you think the people are crying out for a legacy sequel to?
So something I find really interesting is how many sports movies we used to make and how few sports movies we make now. And I wonder if that's got anything to do with how much certain major sports have changed so that the drama doesn't work the same way. But for a specific movie, I mean, it could really be anything in this genre, but for like a specific movie, I recently watched Oliver Stone's Any Given Sunday with Al Pacino as the football coach. And it's a really good movie because it's all about a young quarterback taking over a team, but the entire movie has got this mood of any game you play could be your last, because this is not a career where you're in it for your entire life. You have very short highs, and then when it's over, the rest of your life is chasing those highs, and you never can go back to them. And so it's a very kind of morbid movie about like a younger person dealing with the fact that they have basically taken on a role that is the end of their life, and nothing after this is ever going to matter the same way, and can you cope with that? And the movie is really interesting because it resists. Every character like resists this idea. Everyone always makes some kind of generic person excuse of like, that's not how it's really going to work, even though that's how it always works. So much so that at the end of the movie, as the credits are rolling, as Al Pacino is giving his speech about how he's leaving the team, he immediately announces that he's going to a different team. And so it's a really interesting meta thing where it's like even the movie refuses to acknowledge when it's fucking over, because that's what the movie's about. So doing a legacy sequel to something like Any Given Sunday, or like any other like major sports movie like Varsity Blues or Friday Night Lights or something, where you go back to some of those characters who have now had a whole career, and it's less a sports movie and more just like a human drama of like, what do you do with your life after the game is no longer part of it? Like what does Jamie Foxx do at this stage where he would have been retired for a very long time and he can't play the game anymore, but he still watches it, and knowing full well that he got this lesson when he was a kid, but he was too short on life experience to understand it.
I mean, I guess that's just like he starts being a sports broadcaster or some shit, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. That's a thing some of them do, yeah. But I think that'd be interesting. I'd be here for that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the like logic of what makes these happen, because sometimes I feel like the sequel has been like kicking around in Hollywood for years, and you know, sometimes the belated sequel or the legacy sequel, whatever, just feels like so out of touch because it's just trying to be exactly like the original. It feels like too close to when the original came out. For me, the one that comes to mind, I don't know if it quite counts because it's not super far apart, is Mark of Zorro and Legend of Zorro. Mask of Zorro and Legend of Zorro.
Mask of Zorro, yeah.
Yeah, because Legend of Zorro is 05 and Mask of Zorro is 95, if I'm remembering the years correctly. So it's like, just barely makes that mark. But it is, it's 10 years later. And it's all the same people. It gets Antonio Banderas back. It gets what's the director's name? Did Green Lantern?
Martin Campbell.
Yeah, it gets Martin Campbell back. I think it even has like the same writer. Catherine Zeta-Jones comes back. It doesn't deal with like those awkward things of these belated sequels where like you have to come up with a reason for why this major character is not in the fucking movie. And it doesn't have to deal with any of that. And yet it is just a dog shit movie that feels like it came out in the 90s still, but in a bad way because it's like victim to all this shit that the first movie wasn't victim to of 90s movie tropes. And it's just a terrible movie. And like, what the fuck happened? And it feels like the script just kicked around Hollywood for years and years, and no one knew what to do with it. And then finally they're just like, no, we're setting it, we're doing it live. And then they just made the movie that like had been, bastardized. Because I've heard of this like happening to so many scripts for movies. I think the like most famous example was the sequel to the Flintstones, Viva Rock Vegas, where it just got kicked around for years and years trying to get a sequel to this movie made. And it gets like so many treatments, and eventually someone just like puts all the treatments together and makes the fucking movie just because they either have to make it at this point or they've lost more money on it. And what you get is not a movie, but it's like it's the Freddy Krueger of movies. It's the bastard children of 1,000 madmen. And it's just like this garbage thing. And I feel like that happens to some of these legacy sequels, where it's just no one actually had any ideas. It's just they'd been talking about doing the sequel for so long that now they feel like they just have to. And you just get this like absolute disaster of a film on screen. So Legend of Zorro is probably mine, but yeah.
Have you seen the Beetlejuice sequel that Tim Burton did a couple years ago?
Yeah, Haley and I went to the theater to go see that. It was okay. It wasn't great, but it does like fold in the passage of time by bringing back what's her face. Can't remember the actress.
Winona Ryder.
Yeah, Winona Ryder's character.
Yeah, I liked that movie for the most part. Like, it was fine. It was cute. It has a lot of just like awkward sequel writing stuff that's a little lame, but it was good enough. It's the best movie that Tim Burton's made since the Clinton administration, honestly. So I'm here for that. But that's another example of like, Beetlejuice was supposed to get a sequel basically immediately after it was such a big success in the 80s. And for years and years and years, they just kept kicking the can down the road over and over, and scripts would come and scripts would go, and Burton would sign on and Burton would sign off. And a couple other people, like Kevin Smith, was involved at one point. Like there was I know, right? Could you imagine?
It's just like, is there just someone in Hollywood going like, Tim Burton doesn't want to do this? Well, let's get Kevin Smith instead. Because
right,
like,
literally.
There's so much overlap. It's so funny.
Right. So, like, there's a bunch of stuff in the Beetlejuice sequel that does sort of feel like holdovers from several different pitches. It is basically like 3 different movies smashed together. But the reason I enjoyed it is that's a little bit like the Ridley Scott Gladiator example, if we're going kind of full circle of, Tim Burton had his early career in the 80s and 90s that was great. Every one of those movies is a banger. Sleepy Hollow, banger. Batman Returns, banger. Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, all of them, great movies. Ed Wood, great movie. And then something happens. Something in his brain just fucking breaks after the 2000s. And every movie he made since has just been dog shit. Every single one, just back to back to back,
You don't
just
like
dog
Big
shit.
Fish? I like Big Fish.
I haven't seen it in a while. Maybe I changed my mind, but I wasn't a big fan. But he circles the drain for like 2 decades at that point. And when he goes back and decides to do Beetlejuice 2, he abandons all the CGI he was working with. He abandons a lot of the modern practices that were undercutting his more recent movies. And he goes back and he does like matte paintings and miniatures and makeup and prosthetics. And as not great as Beetlejuice 2 is, like it's not a great movie by any stretch, that kind of stuff where he's just kind of going back to his roots, doing the things that kind of made his reputation, and then him in interviews later saying that like he regretted selling out and making those movies in the 2000s, and getting to come back to Beetlejuice 2 was his opportunity to kind of reestablish what he liked about movies in the first place. I like that about it a lot. I feel like as lukewarm as that movie is, if he comes back and makes another really good movie after this, it's because he had the chance to do Beetlejuice again and remember what made him a good artist in the first place.
That's interesting to think about. I don't know. Like, I would agree that a lot of his delivery post-2000 does, at best, hit or miss. Because, like, I like some of them. I like Sweeney Todd. I like Big Fish. There's things here and there. But then there's other movies of his that are just, terrible.
Dumbo, Planet of the Apes, Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, both the Alice in Wonderland movies are so bad. I like literally one line of dialogue in all of Alice in Wonderland.
What's the one line?
It's kind of like set up throughout the movie, so it's like almost a theme expressed as a line, which is always a nice trick. But like she talks about like believing 7 impossible things before breakfast, and she it's when she's fighting the Jabberwock, and she talks about 6 impossible things, and the 7th impossible thing is, and I can beat the Jabberwock. I'm like, okay, that's kind of a dope ass moment.
That's cute. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, he hit or miss might be more generous, but like, yeah, it's definitely like he took a turn after the 90s, and he hasn't turned back since Beetlejuice, which I appreciate. I like when someone can come back and just be like, you know what, maybe my career hasn't gone the way I intended. Let's get back to the things that are important.
And that's why Steve's a big fan of the Wednesday Addams Netflix series.
Well, that's another one of those wrong turns, right? That's another. Why are you doing this, man? You don't need the money. This is clearly not you. The other example, though, I want to talk about like sequels being kicking around a really long time, and then after you watch it, you're like, why did we make this? Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
So Spielberg makes his 3 Indiana Jones movies, and they're all great. And then they do the first like real big legacy sequel with Crystal Skull, which is, I think, better than people give it credit for, but definitely not as good as any of the original 3. But then there had been ideas for Indiana Jones movies ever since Raiders came out that had all just kind of been evolving for different historical places or different mystical things until eventually you get Dial of Destiny. And Spielberg doesn't come back to do it. They hired James Mangold to do it, the guy who did Logan and Ford versus Ferrari. And they do a time travel plot of like Dial that literally takes you back in time. And, you know, I like James Mangold. I do. I like Ford Ferrari quite a bit. I like Logan quite a bit. I like the idea of him doing a Swamp Thing movie. That seems like it'd be right up his alley. But that's a dog shit movie, man. That is one of the most like, what are we doing here? Every fucking scene. So the big sort of arc Indy has in that movie is he feels like he doesn't belong anymore because the world's moved on so much. And he would rather basically just live in the past. And so the time travel thing is an excuse for him to literally be confronted with this choice of like, now is your opportunity. You could literally just live in the past, but you need to overcome this and go to the future. So when he gets to the past and he has this opportunity to look at a real live historical event and consider just living here, do you know what he does to resolve this conflict and make this choice?
What?
Do you want to know?
Yes.
He gets knocked out and dragged to the future. And then he wakes up and they're like, yeah, we're not letting you do that. And then the movie's over.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Incredible. You set up this whole arc and you don't even let your main character make the decision at the end. It's so bad. And I mean, the action is bad, the editing is bad, it looks like shit. But like it's a movie that like wants to be about the passage of time and about history and about aging, but it doesn't care to do anything with those ideas. It's just like, we got Harrison Ford back, we're making an Indiana Jones movie, all of this other stuff is just set dressing.
Okay then. That sounds great. It just reminds me, like, the only thing, and I feel like this is a big problem, when the only thing I hear talked about with a movie is like decisions that were made from it, as opposed to like, but is it good?
Yeah.
You know, so like there was a lot of discussion around, oh, so why didn't you use the de-aging technology and stuff? And Harrison Ford was talking about how that all looks like garbage, and he's just glad that they got someone to play young him. And I'm like, no, I agree, that's cool, but like, why is that the thing we're talking about? That does not bode well for the movie, that's the thing everyone's focusing on, that when they do flashbacks or whatever with young Indy, they just recast instead of de-aging Harrison Ford. That doesn't bode well.
Well, they did de-age Harrison Ford in Dial of Destiny.
They did?
It was
like, I thought the discussion was all about like recasting for younger actors and shit. Never mind. I missed that.
Because they recast him for a younger actor in Last Crusade because River Phoenix plays him. I think it was River Phoenix plays him in the flashbacks of that movie when that one opens. But Dial of Destiny, they de-age Harrison Ford so that he looks like his younger self, and there's a whole extended opening sequence where he's just young Harrison Ford on a train. But the effects are really bad because he can't he's not emoting. But on top of that, they don't do anything to his voice. So it's 80 years old Harrison Ford talking out of young Harrison Ford's mouth.
Weird.
It's real bad. It's like, it's not even a matter of like, look, we can have an argument about the ethics of the technology, but you just half-assed it. You didn't even try to make it convincing.
Okay, no, I feel weird for not realizing that. I thought that was like the whole discussion was around those. Okay, whatever. Guess that's cool. Oh, it's painful to hear. Okay.
Yeah, not good. Not worth watching.
All right. Yeah, not even like on like an ethical level.
No, if you're gonna watch a legacy sequel to Indiana Jones, you might as well just stick with Crystal Skull because at least it's competent.
Yeah. Wow. Because like you said, they didn't get Spielberg back for that. Oh. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if they even offered it to him at that point or if he just turned it down. But yeah, he did not come back for that one, and it shows.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know. I feel like I'm out of ideas of what to talk about with this one, so I think we're going to just kind of start to wrap up here unless you had anything else you wanted to get into with this.
No, that was the broad strokes of it, I think.
Okay. Well, that was fun. And it was real. And it was real fun. That'll be... I think that does it for this episode, everyone. So thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the Luddite.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.